Lattimer Massacre took place in less than 3 minutes on September 10, 1897. 19 miners were shot in the back and killed by a posse of 150 sheriffs and deputies. Hi, DD Explorers here. Right now I'm in Horrid, Pennsylvania. It's a small town just outside of Hazleton. We're going to talk about the Lattimer Massacre today. 19 coal miners were shot in the back and killed. 45 others were injured. All they wanted was better working conditions, better living conditions, and a little more pay. Coal barons didn't like that, so they hired the sheriffs and they got a posse and deputies, and the miners went on a walk to protest all the bad conditions, and a whole bunch of them were killed. They were unarmed. Let's talk a little bit about this. The victims of the massacre were primarily Eastern European, Polish, Hungarian, Ukrainian, Greek. All they wanted was better working conditions. A lot of the details of this were marred by the passage of time. It took over 80 years to get a memorial in Lattimer regarding this. This is Harwood. This is one of the buildings that the miners used to work in. Back then, there was a lot of tension growing between capital and labor in the years leading up to the massacre. In the 1880s, a series of global and regional economic depressions affected the industry. In 1893, the price of coal dropped drastically, and the coal operators had to be profitable, so they drove the price up by work stoppages, creating a shortage of coal on the market, limiting coal cars available for miners, and they also replaced more miners with machines, which would obviously reduce the cost of labor. The diversity of the groups entering the region was an advantage to the operators. It reduced the threat of organization among the workers. The competition, language barriers made the organization really difficult for the workers. Edward Pinkowski said that Part E filled the houses at Lattimer with Italian immigrants, and those in Harwood with Slovaks, Poles, Lithuanians. He said with the mixture of nationalities, he felt there would be less chance of a consolation of the working men against his interests. And then, conditions in the coal mines were harsh, very harsh. The mine safety was poor, so poor that 32,000 miners in northeast Pennsylvania died from 1870 to 1898, only 27 years. And the wages were already low, and they fell 17% during the mid-1890s after a coal industry slump. Workers were laid off. Conditions got even worse. And many of the companies forced workers to lease the homes from the company, buy goods only from the company store, and to see only company doctors when injured. And because of this, most of their pay went back to the company. Really sad situation. They were basically indentured servants. Some of these poor miners, at the end of the week, actually owed the coal companies money, which is really pathetic. Well, this is another building they used to work in way back then. Anyhow, on with our story. By August 16, there were about 2,000 workers on strike. Nearly all the miners joined the UMW, the United Mine Workers, on August 18th, and within 2 days, almost all the mines in the region had closed due to the spreading strike. Of course, the coal operators were not happy about this. Many Slavic miners didn't join the UMW because of the ethnic discrimination. But the worsening conditions and a UMW call for a 15% wage increase drew many Slavic miners into the union. The strike ended August 23rd. The second strike began August 25th. And the company quickly agreed to raise wages, and the strike ended on about August 28th. New pay rates were announced on September 1, but only a limited number of workers received raises. Management made promises but didn't keep them. Of course, the strikes resumed, and they shut down 4 mines. Even back then, there were power in numbers, and the numbers of the disgruntled coal miners was growing. They were getting stronger day by day. I'm not sure what this building was used for, but right now it's just a big, now what is that down there? Some kind of little hole? I never saw that before. I've been here a few times, but I never saw that before. Let's go check it out. No, it's a piece of building. Foundation of some sort. Got pipes in there. Well, I'm not going to crawl down in there. It's a little steep. I don't feel like getting stuck in there because I'm alone here today. The mine owners had a private armed force, the Coal and Iron Police, but they weren't big enough to handle all these strikers and disgruntled employees. So the coal owners, operators, called upon the Luzerne County Sheriff Department. They were able to help them. James Martin got a posse of about 150 sheriffs and men, deputized men. They weren't just strong enough to deal with all these strikers. So they went to the Luzerne County Sheriff Department and they got assistance there. Within a couple of days, there were over 9,000 miners on strike. They really got their force up. On Friday, September 10, between 300 and 400 miners wanted to protest. They started to walk from Harwood to Lattimer. It's about 4.5 miles away. They started to walk their peaceful protest. None of them had guns. Little did they know what was in store for them that day. The sheriff and the posse stopped them several times along the way, said, "Disperse." But the miners didn't disperse. They were set in their, they had an agenda. They wanted better working conditions, living conditions, and better wages. I mean, could you blame them? Here's a really sad note. Some of the deputies spent most of the morning joking about how many miners they were going to kill. One of them was even heard saying, "I bet I drop 6 of them when I get over there." That's bad. That's bad. We're over here in Lattimer now. This is like the area where the gum tree was, the black gum tree. This is where the sheriff and the deputies were waiting for the miners to show up. They were ready. They were prepared. And by the attitudes that they were showing that day, I don't think they would hesitate to shoot anybody. I don't know if you could hear this, but in the background behind me, there's an active coal mining operation. There's a lot of noise coming from there, but I don't know if you could hear this or not. Okay, when the demonstrators reached Lattimer at about 3:45 p.m., they were met again by the sheriff and 150 armed deputies. Sheriff Martin was ordering the marchers to disperse, and he then attempted to grab an American flag out of the hands of the lead marcher. A scuffle started, and the police opened fire on the unarmed crowd. At least 19 miners died, shot in the back, and 45 were wounded. Several had multiple gunshots. The men were unarmed. It was murder. This event led to a lot of unrest in the area. Sheriff Martin was requesting help, and more than 2,500 Pennsylvania National Guard troops were dispatched to restore order and peace. The local Slovak community leaders held a rally on September 11th to try to calm the workers. They raised money for the provision of families and seek the prosecution of Sheriff Martin and his deputies. A lot of the miners were outraged, and they searched in vain on September 12th for the mine superintendent, Gomer Jones. They destroyed his home when they couldn't find him. And the Guard's artillery unit was withdrawn on September 24th, and the rest of the troops were withdrawn 5 days later. It's hard to imagine it took them 80 years to put up this monument for this massacre. Anyhow, we're going to go now to one of the cemeteries. Okay, we're at St. Stanislaus Cemetery. Most of the miners that were killed were buried here. Sheriff Martin and 73 deputies were put on trial. The defendants claimed that the marchers had refused to obey an order to disperse and were charging toward the sheriff and his deputies. This grave that we're coming up on is one of the priests that helped calm everybody. There was a lot of calming to do after this, because when the miners were shot and killed, there were widows and orphans. And of course, because the miners weren't there to work in the coal mines, these poor people were kicked out of their houses. Coal operators kicked them out. As recounted by witness John Puistai in formal testimony, he said, "I was with the strikers when the shooting occurred. When we approached the sheriff, and he walked to the middle of the road and told us to stop. Some few of the men went forward, and then I heard 2 volleys from the deputies. None of the strikers were armed. I was shot in the right arm, and as I started to run, I was shot in the right leg, the ball entering from the back and coming out in the front." Please don't ask me to pronounce any of these names, because I don't think I could. Ivan Scrap, I could say that one. It's just sad that their tombstones all say the same thing. Shot, September 10, 1897. There's a memorial here, but it's really hard to see it. It's between the fence. Only one of the people shot was a naturalized citizen. The rest of them were immigrants just trying to better their lives. We'll be going to the Vine Street Cemetery in just a few minutes to find Michael Cheslock's grave, the only naturalized citizen that was a victim of this horrific event. Okay, we found it. There he is, Michael Cheslock. He was just standing up for himself peacefully, and he got shot in the back. Lattimer martyr. He was the only naturalized citizen that got shot. Sad. It says Lattimer martyr, Michael Cheslock, born October 17, 1858 in Austria-Hungary. Immigrated to USA February 13, 1882. Applied for citizenship June 28, 1897. Shot dead by sheriff deputies in the Lattimer Massacre, September 10, 1897. Rest in peace, Michael. The sheriff and his deputies were put on trial and they were acquitted, even though most of the miners were shot in the back. The Lattimer Massacre was a turning point in the history of the UMW. Because of this event, there was a dramatic upsurge in members, over 10,000. And 3 short years later, they were powerful enough to get better wages, better living conditions, and better working conditions for the miners. Okay, that's about it for the Lattimer Massacre. Hope you enjoyed the little history lesson. I'm going to wrap up this video now, and thanks for watching. Come on, subscribe, make a comment, click like or dislike, whatever you want to click. It's up to you. Anyhow, hope to see you soon. Peace, baby.